Dr. Sue, international speaker, master of bioenergetic medicine, and quantum field visionary, Dr. Sue directs the flow of energy patterns in the body to activate full human potential. Through her seminars, retreats, and presentations, she illuminates the relationship of quantum science and energy medicine, as well as the elevation of human consciousness and life mastery. Dr. Sue draws from her experience of over 30 years, again, I don't know how, she's only 35, both as a doctor and as a facilitator of groups and individuals interested in natural healing and a better life. She also shares her developments from a perspective drawn from a life-changing awakening during ancient meditation practices. Her Global Taught Energy Codes coursework teaches individuals how to clear subconscious memory blockages and how to master the energetics of their lives. Dr. Sue is a member of the Transformational Leadership Council and is a founder of the Morter Institute of Bioenergetics and Healing, an organization committed to teaching individuals self-healing techniques and a new approach to life based on quantum science. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Dr. Sue Morter.
I'm always going to be interested in you building circuitry to feel yourself. So once you step onto your right foot, step onto your right foot and just kind of move around in your right ankle. Come up and down on your right knee. Contract all the muscles in your right hip. Squeeze them and roll around. Squeeze all the muscles in that right leg. Now take a deep breath in, up through that leg. Breathe it into your heart, let it feel good, and then exhale right out the top of your head. Just like a whale in a blowhole. All right, we're in whale territory. That should be easier. Step onto your left foot. Open the bottom of your left foot. Roll around on your ankle on your left foot. Come up and down on your left knee. Draw some breath up through that leg. Contract all the muscles around the left hip. And roll it around while you're contracting them. Build a line of communication up through your leg into your core. And exhale up and out to the top of your head. Step onto the right foot. Start to twist and rotate. Rotate the lumbar spine. Squeeze your hip joints while you're rotating them and take a big breath in. Breathe in your belly. Exhale out the top of your head. Step onto the other foot. Start to twist and rotate the hips. Open the lumbar spine. Step onto the other leg. Twist. Squeeze your heart. Squeeze the shoulder blades while you're twisting. Contract your abdominal muscles while you're twisting. Take a deep breath in, up through the body. Exhale at the top of your head. Take a deep breath in from overhead. Reach in, breathe down into the body, and exhale down through your open feet. Start to rotate one shoulder back. And then we're just going to do this for an hour and a half. Is that okay? Shoulders back, elbows, wrists. Roll your wrists. Roll your wrists. Feel the joints in your wrists. Feel the elbow joints. Squeeze your shoulders up and down. Take a deep breath in, reach up, and exhale. Reach up, deep breath in, and exhale. Just let yourself fall into the body. Just fall into the body, like free. Let your body move in a free kind of way, not in a cool kind of way. It's so hard not to be cool. You're just cool, you can't help yourself. You're just in a free kind of way. Just let it fall around. Rubber. Like rubber. Say it with me. Just like rubber. Shake it up. Shake it up. Squeeze your shoulder blades. Shake your wrists. Deep breath in. And exhale. Awesome. Good morning. So I think the first 2 minutes we blew the speakers in the room. So I have a tendency to do that, do short circuit technology. The reason for that is there's a lot of energy moving through this system. There is a lot of energy moving through your system. The question is, are you in touch with it? Are you mastering it? Are you managing it in your favor? So today's conversation is going to be about, well, how do we do that? How do we master more of the energy that is moving through this system? How do we master it and steer it and guide our lives in accordance with it? How do we gain the highest perspective of what we're here to do? How do we land our minds on that? We're here to talk this morning about what's next is now. And the reason for that conversation is because the longer we continue to live in a perspective of, I'm going to get this, I'm going to understand this, I'm going to grab a hold of this, the longer we will continue to seek, until we sit in a deeper seat, until we recognize the truth of who we are. Life becomes one challenge after another. Life continues to be almost. How many of us feel like we're just about to step through a threshold? We're just about to put some pieces together that we have never had together before. We feel like something's just about to birth through your life experience. How many of you feel like that's just about to happen? Now, the reason that it feels like that is just about to happen is because we don't have the circuitry to perceive the fact that it has already happened. And so it continues to feel like it's almost ready to occur, because we have the circuitry in place to perceive the almost completeness of our being. So what I want to share with us today is how to develop the circuitry to perceive the fact that it is already done. Because if we can perceive that it is already done, then we step out in celebration instead of just seeking. Right? That we always want to be in the inquiry, we always want to be in the grand adventure, we always want to be available for more. And at the same time, we have to master this disposition of having already landed in our wholeness. And so as we are whole and complete and available, life starts to take on an entirely different flavor. You follow what I'm saying?
Yes. Yes.
All right. So I have a tendency to drop in some major intense statements. All right. And it'll be like your mind will go, woo, what? And if the energy bounces back to me like you didn't get it, don't worry. I will circle the wagons and come back and explain it in normal speak. Okay? Because here's what happened. I was raised in an environment where quantum science was our dinner table conversation. And the idea that what you think creates your reality, and how we perceive life is how life reflects back to us. That was what I grew up with. And so I understood the conversation. And yet, there was something still on an experiential level that wasn't happening inside of me, but I didn't know it. So I grew up being a good daughter and a good sister and a good person, a good girl, whatever. And then I went to school and I was a good student, and then I graduated and I was a good doctor and a good citizen in the community, etc. And you know, being that good is really exhausting. You follow? Yeah. If you perceive yourself having to work at being good, it's really exhausting trying to be good all the time. When in reality, we're made of goodness. We're just made of goodness. But I hadn't really put those pieces together in that fashion in my 20s. So I graduated from school, opened my own practice, treating patients and having a staff and other doctors when by the time I was 25 years old. That was what was happening in my world. So that was just a couple of years ago. Times a lot. And what I recognized was that I was good at being good, and I was getting exhausted at being good, and at trying to be good, I should say. And so I was at the top of my profession. I was being invited to come and speak to chiropractic and healthcare environments, etc. And I was living in the house of my dreams and driving the car that I wanted to drive, etc., and taking my friends on vacation and to these islands actually that we're visiting, and I was empty inside all at the same time. There was all the success and, you know, just not really feeling it. And so I went out on my back deck and asked, you know, what do I need to do? Because I'm following all the rules. I'm doing all the things that you're supposed to do in order to make it, pull it together in this life. And this is what I'm feeling. You know, is this it? Is this all it's going to be? So it's that story that we've heard many times from many people, probably your version of that story. You could put your finger on and name that version, your version of that same story. And I know that because that story is the story of humanity. It's everyone's story. Everyone's story is trying and succeeding, and then feeling a limitation on that effort, and then dropping into some disillusionment, some disappointment, some dismay, some disorientation, and then dropping into some new anchoring state, and then ultimately pulling it together and quickening and anchoring and rising up into a truer version of who we are. And so each of us in this room, in this moment, is somewhere along that story. So I love to pull the fact that everyone's in the same story together, because last night we stood in a circle and we threw yarn and wove a beautiful network of love together. And the idea was, how do we demonstrate to ourselves that there's a tapestry amongst us and that we are part of that tapestry? And it was a beautiful demonstration of that, a beautiful experience of that. And what I would love to introduce in this conversation today about what's next is now is that we recognize that that tapestry is always there, and it is just a matter of, have you trained your mind to perceive the tapestry or not? Or is your mind distracted off into the splat? And I'll explain what I mean by that. Is your mind get pulled off center, off into storyland, off into filling in the blanks with things that you don't really know, but you are trying to figure out, and so the mind will write a story so that it has some idea, some perception that it knows what's going on. And then that settles it just a little bit, and then we can move toward our own evolution. But here's what happens. We land here, and we splat. We kind of, our mind goes one way, our breath goes another way, our body goes another way, and our soulful self is just kind of hanging out, waiting until we pull it together enough to create a vessel that it can slip down in and have a life here. Do you follow what I'm saying? So if you feel like you're kind of in and kind of not in, sometimes you belong and sometimes you don't, sometimes you're wise and sometimes you're not, sometimes you're in your power, sometimes you're not so much, sometimes you're super clear and super creative, and then sometimes you can't access that to save your soul, right? Is what it feels like. And what we really want to recognize is that we have access to all, around the pillar here, are we okay? I'll move around. That we have access to all of these aspects of our wholeness all the time. The question is, do we have the circuitry in place to tap in anytime when it's needed, when it's wanted and needed in any particular circumstance? But one of my first points that I want to have made here is that there is nothing missing in anyone's recipe. There is nothing missing, there is nothing broken, there is nothing wrong. And in that, if we can recognize that and hold that as a postulate for ourselves, then some of our thoughts begin to change. They just begin to shift, and the stories that we would write will take on a different meaning. They'll take on a different disposition. If there's nothing broken and nothing missing and nothing wrong, if there's nowhere to go and nothing to accomplish and nothing to achieve, if we were already there, if what we were after had already happened, how would we be perceiving this day? How would we be living this particular life? And this is a very important question that we have to ask ourselves. So let me say this. You know, I was raised in this environment. I recognized that there was something more that I needed to explore. I stepped out onto my back balcony and said, you show me, because I'm not getting it following the rules. And it wasn't that the skies parted in that moment. They parted later in my life. And there was no big voice that came down. But what happened, of course, in the days and weeks to follow was people would show up and hand me books and invite me to things, and posters would come up in front of me as I was walking down the street. And it was because I had dialed into a different radio station. I had dialed into a different frequency. I was now in the frequency of, okay, show me what else. Show me what exists beyond what I've already perceived as the smart, right things to do. Show me what else is in store for me. So when I dialed into that radio station, of course, the universe had no choice but to start presenting those things in front of me, because that's the way the universe works. You follow? Now, there are no exceptions to that. In fact, what quantum science is teaching us is that your external environment, your world that you're living in, is 100% a reflection of your own consciousness. Yeah! Especially if you stop and think about some of the stuff that's going on in that outer world. You want to say, wait a minute. No, there's no way that's me. Right? Well, what it is representing to you is an example of the parts of you that haven't yet found the other parts of you. They're not talking to each other. They all exist, but there is not an integration in a fashion that allows you full access all the time, anytime. So the truth of it is that healing is actually a byproduct of integration. All healing is a byproduct of integration. So what I say is that, you know, it's really not about healing. It's really about revealing your magnificence, coming into contact. So I know that the people that are gathered here at this cruise are interested in holding that space for you. So when I say the words healing to you, I don't mean to infer that there is anything broken. that there is anything wrong or anything that is needing to be fixed or healed. What I am saying is there is an integration that is happening in your life by nature. Because when we land and we splat, and our mind goes one way, and our breath goes another way, and our body goes another way, and the soulful, loving presence is just hanging out, waiting for us to pull things together enough that it can slide in here and start to have a life itself. While that's going on, we perceive that we are broken, or we perceive that something else is broken, and that we become desperate, or we become in pain in a fashion that keeps us from feeling our wholeness. And we start seeking, and we start trying this and trying that, and reading this and listening to that, and observing this and going to that, and all of that is serving in the pulling back together again. So I just want to set a context for you this morning that says everything that you're going to hear this week is about your process of continuing to quicken, to pull yourself back together again and anchor yourself so that you can rise again as the true essential self. Because this is how it happens. You land, you splat, you disperse. Your mind, your breath, your body go separate ways. You develop a way of being, a way of operating, a way of surviving in the world based on that splat. Okay? Out here on the periphery of that, you develop a protective personality. Now, it's really the ego, but don't tell your ego that it's the ego, because nobody likes to have an ego. But people don't seem to mind having a protective personality, because, and so we work with that, and we get to weave it back together and start the process that I'm describing. If we manage it in that fashion, so it is the false self. It's an identity of self that is survival based, and in that survival base we feel friction. Okay, and this is a law of quantum science. When it's not just quantum science, this is a law of physics. When high frequency energy hits the density of a lower frequency energy, friction occurs right at the intersection point. Friction occurs, okay? So when a spirit being, high frequency energy, when a spirit being is coming into the physical dimension, into the physical body, friction occurs. In that splat, the friction is occurring out here in the outer periphery, okay? So that friction shows up in your life like you're not getting along with your parents, or not getting along with your siblings, or not getting along later in life with your teachers, or not getting along with your boss, or some type of not getting along with yourself. You follow? Yeah. So because there are parts of you that are splatted now, they're in opposition to one another. From a polarity standpoint, there are aspects of you that aren't united. So that friction is by design. So if you could start to recognize, wow, the friction in my life is by design, it's not a problem, it's actually part of the solution. If I would start utilizing it as part of the solution, I could start to capitalize on the fact that you're making me crazy in this moment. You follow? The friction is part of a solution. It's part of a solution. So in that friction moment, if we could remember this thing that I'm about to say, okay? We learn through resistance in this dimension. We learn through friction and resistance, by pushing back against something, by rejecting something as a default mechanism. But we learn by resistance. We learn to find who we are, to find our place in the world, etc. So my invitation to people in the work that I'm teaching, the coursework, is to learn how to create the resistance inside the body temporarily, so that you can find your coordinates and know who you are without having to create that resistance in the outer world, out here on the periphery of the splat. You follow? Yes. So it doesn't mean walk around with resistance inside all the time just so you can know who you are. But if you're walking around with tension in your body all the time, that is a subconscious effort to do what I'm talking about. So what I'm teaching in the coursework is teaching you how to create a resistance that is mild, that is deeper toward the core of your system, so that you can release these outer muscles that are currently carrying the tension, so that your subconscious can feel itself. You follow? When you have like squeeze your body right now, just squeeze everything in your body. So what that does is it concentrates the energy right here, right? So when you are angry, you're, oh, I'm so mad. What's happening in that moment energetically is that you're trying to anchor yourself. That is the quickening that happens after the splat. So go ahead and relax, okay? You don't have to do that for the next 45 minutes, okay? So what happens with that quickening is an attempt for the system to anchor itself, because by design, you're going to come here, you're going to land, you're going to splat, you're going to disperse, and by design, you will initially wake up on that outer layer. And your senses will start looking outwardly to figure out what's going on. Am I safe? Who is this? You know, am I in a safe environment? Do you love me? Because I don't feel the love right now. I can't possibly feel whole because I'm splatted and dispersed. So I'm attached to the mind that's out here hyper-vigilantly checking out the environment to see if everything's okay. So we start building a way of being, then exchanging, that's bargaining. Like if I do this, I get good feedback, so that means you like me. If I do this and I behave, then I get what I'm looking for, etc. So our orientation is externally focused. Make sense? Yep. What we have to do, and what happens in every awakening process for someone, is that eventually their senses are no longer directed outwardly and they become directed inwardly. Okay? Now, for the protective personality, this is a frightening and scary thing to do because it's looking outwardly for a reason, because it's looking for safety. But the only reason that we perceive ourselves to not be safe is because we are perceiving ourselves to not be whole. And if we are perceiving ourselves to not be whole, it is because we have landed and we have splatted, and the energetic vibrational frequency that is being received to the surface of your very cells is only a partial message. Okay? So I'm going to stop for a moment and say this. Have you heard of epigenetics?
Yes.
Has anyone never heard of epigenetics? Shoot your hand in the air. Okay. So epigenetics is a newer science. It's about 100 years old, but it's newer. Okay. And it is revealing to us that your energetic environment is more important than your genetic inheritance. Okay? Your environment is more important than your inheritance. So, meaning your genetic code. All right? So your environment doesn't just mean the pollution out there, etc. It means the field of energy that you're walking around in. So energy is what you're made of. In fact, everything in all of creation is energy. You are just your energy compressed into a body. So if you decompress this energy package, you just become pure energy, right? So we start compressing that energy, and now we're walking around as this compressed energy system. And we land here, we splat, we disperse. We can't perceive our wholeness because in that dispersed state, the energy that's coming all the way to our core surface of the cell that has these little radio antennas on it that is receiving a radio station that either says, coast is clear, all is well, or it says, you know, I don't know, something's missing. I don't know what's going on, but there's something not quite right. You follow? You ever had that feeling? Like, I don't know what's going on, but I just feel like something's not quite right. The reason that we are perceiving that kind of message is because we haven't pulled it back together again and quickened so that the mind and the body and the breath are operating together as a team, as a unified being, as a unified space, a unified entity. Tracking?
Yes.
So we have to pull mind, body, breath back together again so that the message that's hitting the surface of our cells is a congruent, whole, clear, integrated message so that the cells receive the message that all is well, so that they then send a message up to the brain that says, you know, coast is clear. And so when the coast is clear, you drop out of defense physiology, protectivism, hypervigilance, and it makes it easier for you to turn your attention inward. So what happened with me was this. About 16 years ago, I was attracted to meditation. I sat down in a meditation with a group of people for the first time, about 300 people in the room. I was taken through a guided meditation, and instantly I was transported into another dimensional version of reality. So much so that when I came out of that, I was like, okay, I gotta do more of that, okay? Because I felt something I had never felt before. So I continued to go to these meditation retreats, and about the fourth or fifth time I was there, about the fourth or fifth meditation that I did, boom, I landed in an even bigger version of that. What happened was, I, in my perfectionistic way, trying to be a good person, do the right thing, etc., had been given a a list of things to do by the teacher that was running the show that were literally impossible to do in the amount of time that she gave me to do them. She was on to me, okay? So I'm running around trying to do all these things and trying to grab this and get this for her, you know, and back home, I'm running a clinic with doctors and patients and staff all week long, 12 hours a day, and then I was going on the weekends to these retreats, and all day long, all night long, I'm running around trying to, fulfill these lists that I'm being given. And so finally, at some point, I'm in the back of the hotel at some point with everyone else down in the ballroom, having a lovely time chanting and, you know, oming and meditating, and I was just like, well, I can't tell you what I actually said in that moment. It was very succinct. It was very specific. You know what I said. It ended in it, okay? All right? And it was big, okay? It was the big bomb, okay? Boom! And I was like, you know, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm not doing this. So I'm going to go in that room and sit down and have me a meditation. I'm just going to go do that thing with these people. I don't know what's going to happen, and she's going to be disappointed in me, whatever. So I go down, I sit down, and they're chanting Sanskrit, which I don't know. I didn't know at the time. And they were chanting it very slowly, so I was having to take these deep breaths that I wasn't used to taking, and allowing myself to sit down in here in a way that I hadn't felt before. And I didn't care. I was just, for the first time, I was going to let something come out of me, whether it sounded good or bad or whatever. I turned my senses inward. You follow? And in that moment, I was transported into another dimension. My consciousness awakened to a version of myself that was me, but I wasn't in a physical body. I was a ray of light, and I could see the earth beneath me about the size of a marble, and I was embedded into it up to about what would have been my knees. I could see 360 degrees around me in a light so brilliantly bright. It was 10 times brighter than the brightest day in the desert I had ever seen. It was this beautiful, brilliant light, and then it was bright light below, and there was this horizon, just like you can see when you look out your window on this boat, which is what I love about speaking on a cruise, because it's as close to that as you can get to mimic the state. So at some point, you go onto the top of this boat, and you stand and you look around, and you know that that is closer to the real you, the reality that is more true than this one. It isn't an altered state, it's the true state. This is an altered state. Okay? So I was there. I could see 360 degrees around me, the same, exactly the same. And every time I took a breath in, this beautiful pink, iridescent, translucent light would rise. This horizon would just rise, bless, big blessing right in this moment. And it would fall as I would exhale. And then on every inhale, it would rise up again, just immense in every direction. And it would exhale. It would fall back down to its perfect peaceful state. And what I knew in that moment was that this is the truth of who we are. This is who we all are. And what I also knew was that light was coming through this system, and the more I would allow love to happen, the more it would translate this light into love, and I was feeding the planet. I could tell that that's what was happening through every single one of us, that we are single points of consciousness that are allowing this compression of light into love through the vibration of this body into the third dimension, into this physical dimension that this physical body represents. You follow what I'm saying? So the degree to which you allow love to happen through your system allows you to deliver on why you came faster, more efficiently, more consistently, unwaveringly. It is there. So in that state, most importantly, I knew there was nowhere to go, nothing to become, there was nothing missing, there was nothing broken, there was nothing wrong. There was nothing to heal. You follow? I was completely fulfilled, completely satiated, completely present, and completely whole. I knew that there was nothing but me, that everything that existed, I was that. And so when I came down out of that, excuse me, when I came down out of that and I opened my eyes, I'm sitting in this room with 300 people. I look up to the front of the room, and this teacher is sitting locked eyes on me with a big smile on her face, like, gotcha. Yeah. And I was like, yes, you did. Got it. Anytime. I'll take that to-do list now. You follow? Yeah. So the performing you has to drop in to the present you, into this deep internal being. So it took me the next decade to figure out how to recreate that experience for myself. how to integrate the pieces and parts of me so that I could gain access to that state at will. It took me 10 years to do that, working with patients, experimenting, working with this again, etc., in a fashion that would allow me to live it with every action that I took, to live it with every perception that I was interpreting, every experience that I was having. And what it took me to recognizing was this. This is what I now call the energy codes, a part of which I'm going to share with you in a very integrated, intensive way in our workshop on the 16th, on Wednesday morning, first thing in the morning, right after, well, I think it's 8 o'clock, is it? It's 8 o'clock on Wednesday morning. I'm going to bring a very concentrated version of some of those practices to you before we get off the boat for an excursion or something on Wednesday as well. So it would be perfect for you to integrate that and then go off on your excursion, because we want to integrate the circuitry to allow the whole higher self to be present here and then set it into motion out in the world, right? So it's perfect timing for that. So it became the energy codes, and this is what I came to recognize after I generated this. I started teaching people how to embody, how to integrate, how to be living in this quickened, anchored, rising state. And I started teaching yoga because it was just part of an essential way of being. By the way, how was yoga this morning? Yeah, it was great. So the rest of you guys get to join us tomorrow. There's a little more room on the deck. We can pull that together. We're putting this in motion. We're putting this in action. And so people asked, I hear you teach yoga. You know, are you a yoga teacher? And I was like, yeah, no, I don't know. I hadn't ever taken yoga teacher training, and here I was teaching people how to do this stuff. So I realized to be in integrity, I had to go take yoga teacher training so that I could teach yoga and know what yoga teachers were saying to people, so that I could relate to the yoga teachers and try to give them a big picture understanding of what's really going on in those sacred practices that they may or may not even be aware of. Because you can go through a yoga teacher training and not really know what I'm talking about. Now I know, okay? So I went and took yoga teacher training, and one of the books, the principles that they had me teach, or that they had me read about, were these yoga sutras, etc. And one of the fathers of pulling yoga together was, this is thousands of years old information. I read that the 8 most important things that an individual has to do in order to live in harmony and wholeness in the course of their life were these particular principles. And when I read through them, I recognized that they were describing the energy codes. They were describing what I had accessed on my own. And the reason I'm sharing that with you is that, number one, I was thrilled because my work was validated by information that was thousands of years old. So I was thrilled about that. And most importantly, what it meant to me was that this information is alive and well for us today. It isn't something that we have to read about, that was available to the sages thousands of years ago. That it is actually what we're made of. And that all we have to do is learn how to access that and bring it up and out. And I was thrilled about that, because I knew when I was in that state the very first time that every one of us is destined for this experience. Every one of us is made of this. And so all we have to do is learn how to access it. And so in the process of those 10 years, that's what I was cultivating. And so I'm kind of retro-engineering that and reversing it and walking you through the unfoldment process. Here's what I know. People seek outwardly, and the answer to what is next for you, I assure you, is to seek inwardly, is to come home. Because when you're landed in your core with all of your resources, anytime you're exposed to an expansive idea, anytime that someone brings a message of love or of light to you, you're going to perceive it and receive it on a deep cellular level, and therefore be able to sustain it differently than if you're not in your body learning about those concepts, if you're not anchored in your core. Because the protective personality can still learn about these ideas that I'm talking about. But if you're not landed in your core with your mind and your body and your breath connected again and anchored and building the neurocircuitry to access that all the time, it will not be sustainable. If you go out and create something, it will fall apart, or whatever energy it takes for you to create it, you're going to have to continue to barrel that kind of energy into it in order for it to keep going. And there is an easier life available to you. There's a flow that is trying to happen. There is a tapestry that is actually in motion. So if you could picture this magic carpet that is just right there waving and constantly allowing energy to roll across it and to unfold in this way. If you could picture the thread, the woven together red thread of love that we created inside the circle of our wholeness last evening. If you could picture that waving like the American flag does on a football field when they're singing the national anthem, just picture that moving. That is truly a magic carpet that you're on. And what I know, I have the opportunity to speak with Eben Alexander. You're familiar with Map of Heaven? And well, yes, Map of Heaven is his second book. Proof of Heaven is his first book. Map of Heaven also, and Anita Morajani, Dying to Be Me, etc. So they have experiences like what I have. They have had experiences like what I have, and I have dinner with them, and we just kind of start joking. It's like, you know, you don't have to nearly die to have that experience, but a part of you has to die. A part of you has to die, and the part of you that has to die is the part of you that's making you miserable in the first place. So it's kind of okay, right? It's a good trade. It's a good trade. Because the part that feels like it's dying is the part of you that when you land and you splat and you disperse and you're out here building this false self, this protective personality, you hold on for dear life. You have attachments, you have conditions, all these things get created because you don't feel whole. You can't possibly feel whole in the splat. But if we can start to pull our energies back together again, we will feel our wholeness. So it's as if we release these attachments without even trying. So if you've been trying to let go of habits and patterns, if you've been trying to create better habits and patterns, if you've been trying to heal the mind on the level of the mind, it's going to be a long road. There's going to be a lot more effort involved than needs to be involved. If you will heal the mind's tendencies by coming on to another dimension of yourself, coming on to the great grand central station with your attention. And I'm going to explain this in yet another context in just a moment. But if you will come home to that, you will find that you, out of the corner of your eye, you will notice that you have already let go of something that wasn't serving you. And you'll go down the road a little bit more and you'll recognize that you're a lot less conditional than you used to be for enjoying yourself. And that circumstances don't have to be just so in order for you to open up and feel love and to receive. And what I find in 30 years of practice with people is that people, let me just ask you, how many of you find it easier to give than to receive? No? How many of you find it easier to receive than to give? How many of you find it equally okay and flowing to give and receive? Okay. And let me go back again. How many of you feel that it's easier to give than to receive? So here's the deal. Until we are receiving directly in proportion to our giving, we're actually creating a vacuum in the world, in the cosmos. We're not contributing. We think we are. And the protected personality is better to be giving than to be taking. But if you will come onto your core, you will find that you are receiving more parts of the self, more parts of your wholeness into your own state of consciousness. You are allowing, you are embracing. It's all the same thing. So we have to learn ways to do that. So we're going to work with some things while we're talking here. I just have one more thing that I want to share with you before we move into that, okay? So that we can have this big picture context and understand what I'm doing, how it's coming together, what is available for me right now in this moment, so that I can feel more love. Because ultimately, what's next is now. Meaning, quantum science is showing us that if you create a vacuum, meaning you create a sealed container, and you just suck everything out of it, that they will find randomly placed photons just there, the tiniest particle in the physical world, just randomly scattered about. If you walk up to that experiment and you think a thought into that, you feel a feeling into that, the photons arrange in a certain pattern. They just hop to in accordance with your thought. They hop to in accordance with your disposition, okay? This is pretty freaky great. Freaky first, then great, once we recognize how to master that, okay? Because they go into whatever pattern they go into, whether you're happy that day or whether you're freaked out that day. They go into whatever pattern you're doing, okay? But you think a thought, you feel a feeling into that vacuum, and the photons, they arrange in accordance with you. They respond to you instantly. You can even walk away from that experiment, go on about your business, come back, and they're still in that pattern that you left them. You follow? This is pretty significant. It's significant because it's telling you that you are made of creator stuff. You're creating your physical reality, one tiny particle at a time. You think the thought again, consciously or subconsciously, you're emitting a vibratory frequency that is making photons arrange in a certain pattern. You got this? You didn't even mean to think it. Never mind, it was something I thought 30 years ago. I just never stopped thinking it. I didn't know it. But there it is. Boom, it's arranging my photons. So we have to find a way to open the trap door between the conscious and the subconscious so that we're constantly intending something good and beautiful and whole for ourselves, and our system can constantly be responding. But we have to get good at receiving before that's going to happen. Because the subconscious has to be receiving in order for it to glean from what our conscious mind is trying to do. So we could be going out there trying so hard to be good and to do good and to have good and to share good. And if we're doing it from our fear-based protective personality, we're going to be exhausted. We're going to be doing good work in the world and helping lots of other people, but we're going to collapse inside because we're creating a vacuum and all of our attention is going outward. Our photon placement is for everybody else. You follow? Mm-hmm. So I also notice that people who are really good givers, they have family members that might not even appreciate them because you've been giving all along. And they don't even know that you're giving. They don't even know. And it can actually generate a feeling of anger subconsciously, a feeling of resentment deeply seated. And that resentment is creating a photon pattern in a particular fashion for you. And it will generate a non-whole, healed, well space that you're living in. But here's what I want you to understand. There is no such thing as a negative emotion. And this is something that we're going to go into deeper in the workshop that I'm teaching. But I gotta bust this up, because here's the deal. We're made of God stuff. We're made of creator stuff. And what science is teaching us is that it's smart to love. That's what science is teaching us right now. Okay? So whoopee-doo, yay. If we needed the science to convince us of that, now we have the evidence, as if we didn't know. But science is also teaching us that we are in charge. We are in charge of what's happening here. Right? So it is also teaching us that everything is expanding. And the general interpretation of that expansion is evolution. And the general inference of that evolution is that it is good. That what is unfolding is of goodness. Even if it doesn't look good with a snapshot moment, you look into our culture now, in our country right now, there's so much, I contend this is a beautiful opportunity for us to work with what I'm speaking about right now. That that's happening is allowing you to get into the stuff that became complacent, the stuff that's been asleep, the stuff that hasn't been engaged and involved. I know more people that are awake to the news and talking about it and engaging than I've ever seen in my life. And what I know is this is generating a possibility of rearranging photons that you didn't even know were arranged in a fashion that was not in your favor. You got it? You got it? Because science is telling us that there is only one thing happening here, and it is good. Damn it, it's good. Okay? And if you got to get your damn it on, but have it be in the direction of this is goodness, and my job is to figure out the good that I can generate in the face of this stir. Wow. You follow? Wow. I got to be the stabilizing presence in the face of the wake, of the wobble. Yeah. I have to be that. So in order to do that, I have to come home to myself. I have to build the circuitry to feel myself in here, regardless of the friction. Because if I just go to fight back from the protective personality, I'm going to create more fight. But if I come home to the love-lighted being that I am, and I walk into that wobble, I'm going to bring a stabilizing presence to the photon field of everyone around me. Do you follow? Yeah. We have the opportunity to do that. So there is only one thing happening here, and it is good. And I also want to say this, that I said just a few moments ago, there is no such thing as a negative emotion, right? So you take anger, you take fear, and people are always trying to get away from anger and fear. They're trying to release it. And if you release your anger, I'm probably going to step in it when I walk by. You follow? If you release your fear, it's going to smack somebody else in the face as they walk through the room. You follow? So they're working to get rid of their own, and then they walk into yours, and they're getting rid of their own, they walk into somebody else's. And that's not what we're here to do, okay? We're here to transmute. We're here to transmute. But I don't even want you to think that you're transmuting something bad. What you're doing is recognizing, oh my God, the universe is in my favor. The whole cosmos is unfolding in one glorious fashion, and I'm a part of that. And I'm no longer going to set myself apart from it by thinking that it's bad. I have to get on board with the greatest force in creation, which is evolution. That's what's going on here. So there's only one thing happening here, and it's good, even when you're angry. Why? Because if you think about, oh, everybody just get angry for a moment. Just, what just happened is you quickened, you anchored. Anger actually is an anchoring vibrational frequency. Joy, love, everybody go to joy. Joy! Yeah! Okay? People don't go, I'm so happy. They don't do that. They don't go, God, am I afraid? They don't do that, right? It doesn't go. Vibrationally speaking, if you just kind of like wrap your mind around this for a minute, everything that is happening in creation is either an expansion or an anchoring. Because the universe is doing this, it's breathing. The universe is doing this, it's expanding. And we would call it contraction, but I don't want you to have a judgment against the word contraction. So we'll call it anchoring, okay? Just like we don't like to have an ego. So we won't, okay? We'll just have a protected personality and work with it for a while, okay? And then in the rearview mirror, we don't mind, oh man, was my ego in charge? I never had one, but boy, oh boy, did it have a hold of me. You follow what I'm saying? Okay, so here's the deal. It's expanding and it's anchoring, and it's expanding and it's anchoring, and it's expanding and it's anchoring. Don't you dare try to get in the way of that, because you can't get in the way of it. It will eat you alive if you try. You follow? They call it chronic degenerative disease. They call it asthma. They call it allergies. They call it cancer. They call it AIDS. You name it. That's it. It's just on a spectrum of resistance. That's what's happening. So if I just stirred something in you that says, oh, are you saying that I created this in my own life? I'm going to say, yeah. And you've got what it takes to handle it. You were built for this. You can totally manage that, turn it around, turn it inside out, and no one signs up for something they are not bigger than to handle. It's impossible. It's cosmically, universally impossible for you to be given something you cannot handle. The question is, have you trained yourself to recognize your own power? Have you accepted, have you received your own magnificence? Or are you continuing to deny it, resist it, and reject it, and hold it at bay because of some part of your story, which was inevitable? You signed up for the story. Your version of the story is the story. It's the story. We're in this together. We all have the story and our personal version of the story. The story is you land, you splat, you disperse, you experience yourself as less than whole. You get tired of beating the streets on that and trying to prove it wrong. You ultimately surrender. In that surrender, you have an opportunity to quicken and to anchor and to rise. Because the cosmos is doing that. It's expanding you beyond who you thought you were, and then it's going to anchor you. So if you're going along and you're angry, know that this anger is serving me, but because it's trying to anchor me. Okay, so you're no longer angry, you're anchoring. Okay? Let's just be anchoring. I'm so anchoring, okay? Just let that kind of be where you're coming from now on. It allows you to take it less personally. If you take your personal story less personally, you can make a contribution to the cosmic universal flow that is attempting to happen through you constantly, and you're no longer resisting it. You follow what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's going to let you experience your own magnificence. It's so awesome. It's just so awesome. It's so crazy awesome. I can't believe how much pain I created in my life. I was so freaked out. I slept in my closet as a kid. Right? I slept on the floor in my closet because I only had to look one direction. And the three walls had my back. You follow? That's pretty scared. That's pretty afraid. And on the flip side of that, I walk out on stages and they say, we have 90,000 people watching live. You know, and this previous part of me would have been like, yeah, I'm not going out there. Are you kidding me? I'll just go back into the green room and climb under the couch and hang out until this whole thing is over. That's how I would have been. You follow? And now I'm like, oh my God, would you just let it happen? Just let it fall through you, because it's going to. It's going to. The cosmos, creation, the universe, it's a little bit bigger than any one of us, any single point of consciousness that we're representing in this moment. And yet we are that. The whole idea is to recognize, oh, God, what if it was all in my favor? What if this was a team that I was on already? I was already picked for the team. Okay, now that's just a step. I want you to ultimately recognize you picked the team. You picked the team. You picked your parents. You picked the whole circumstances. You picked the conditions, the circumstances. You picked it all because you wanted to wake up more than you'd been awakened before. And so you choose on a soulful level to come to this dimension and work it out. That's what's going on here. It's the truth of who you are. We said in yoga this morning, it's not about finding, feeling the energy that's running through your body. It's about teaching the mind that that's who you are. You are the energy that's running through this body. And your job is to teach the mind to find you. Teach your mind to find you. But here's what happens. The mind operates so rapidly. It's like this ceiling fan that's just spinning so fast, you would never stick your finger through it. You follow? So it's operating so fast, we have to learn to slow the mind down. We have to learn to slow it down because the truth of you is this beautiful essence that is here, landed, and gathering itself, quickening and anchoring and wanting to rise. But if this mind is going so fast, this beautiful essential self can never break through. It just can't get through. Because you're busy worrying, and you're busy doubting, and you're busy hating your body, and you're busy wishing that your parents had been different or treated you differently, or you're wishing that your life was different, and that money was different, and that time was different, something. Yeah, You're filling in the blanks of all kinds of story writing, instead of just working with the raw, beautiful energy that is true, And your job to come here was to tame this thing. But we're so stuck inside of it, we can't get it off of us long enough to feel this beautiful self here. You follow? So we have to slow the mind down so that we can rise in tandem right up through that mind field and experience ourselves as the divine light being that we are. And in doing that, how we're going to make that happen is we have to learn how to anchor instead of anger. We have to learn how to anchor so that we don't have to anger. Because anger or fear or frustration, somebody would have asked me previously in my life, why are you so angry? And I would say, I'm not angry, I'm just frustrated, right? So frustration was a more sophisticated version for what I was feeling inside. All of it is about trying to control your environment, and it's not working in your favor. It's not going the way you think you want it to go. And that's truly the greatest favor that could happen to you. The universe, source, is constantly saying, you don't want to keep controlling it that way. You want to drop in here and find the way that is moving in your favor without you having to control it. Dig? You follow?
Dig it.
There's a greater magic carpet ride available for us if we learn how to perceive it. And that is what I love sharing with people. It's building the circuitry to be able to perceive home. You have to call your spirit back. And then you have to recognize, oh, it's not about me calling my spirit back. It's about me training the mind to recognize I am the spirit. So I get invited into scientific communities. I get invited to speak at NASA for a TED Talk, and I get invited to speak in medical conversations all the time. And I get invited into spiritual conversations. I take the services often when Reverend Michael Beckwith is out of town at Agape in LA. We mentioned that last night. And when I go into either community, I speak the language of the opposite community. So I go into medical and scientific communities and I bring this spiritual conversation into it. And I go into spiritual communities and I bring this scientific conversation into it, because the two worlds do not belong separated from one another. And science is proving that. Quantum science is the combination of those two. And we, as individuals, have to take the lead. We have to take the nod. Because what it is telling us is, you are not working with energy. You are the energy. You're training the mind to work with you. And it's a very big next. It's the next for us. It is the next for us that I would love to impress upon you during this cruise in every spare moment that I have to do that. Through the yoga classes that I'm teaching, through the workshop that I'm teaching, through the other keynote that I'll be giving toward the end of the program, is to impress upon you, you have to have a quantum flip here. You have to trade places with spirit. So you can't listen to spirit only. You have to, you can't speak to spirit. You have to speak from spirit. You have to be as that. You have to trust that it is you that is bringing this forward, because we are made of energy. The whole of creation is made of energy. And if you take energy and start compressing it, eventually you create physical form. This physical body is just compressed energy. That's it. You're an energy being. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. You are 100% energy. And if you start decompressing that, you will feel it better. So what we have to do is first anchor. So I'm going to teach you just a little something today, in case the workshop is limited. Or I think we're in the chapel, and I think the seating is around 20 people. Is that right? 20. So 20. So we have maybe half of that filled already. I don't know, but more than half. So okay. So try to let us know if you want to be in that. But if I don't get to work with you in that fashion, please leave today with these exercises in mind, knowing that this will get me on the way to really starting to quicken, anchor, and rise up, so that I can feel this expansion and anchoring and expansion and anchoring, literally feel it physically in my life, and I can recognize the circumstances that are happening in my life are serving my purpose for coming. I talk about something called the bus stop conversation. It is, briefly, I will share with you, it is soulful contracts. That on the way here, you catch the bus. You know, you thought you came by the stork. I hope I'm not, blowing that for anybody. But you didn't get here by the stork, okay? Maybe we should take a moment. Go ahead. It wasn't the stork, okay? And there's just a new twist on it. It is that you actually caught a bus to get here, okay? So while you're hanging out at the bus stop waiting for the bus, you have to strike up a conversation with people about what is it that you're going in for. Like, what are you in for, okay? So you catch the bus to go to Earth, and you're having this conversation. And someone says, well, I've been there before, it's pretty awesome, but this time I'm really going to go for it. And I'm going to have a level 10 experience of forgiveness. Because I did this forgiveness thing last time, and it was like a 4 or 5, and it was, it was rocking. And so I'm going to go. I think I got myself together enough that I'm gonna go for it. So you come in, and you follow. You got it. You got where I'm going here. So the other people at the bus stop are like, well, what's it going to take for you to have that level 10 experience? And you're like, I don't know. I guess somebody's going to have to do something that's like nearly unforgivable, and I'm going to have to live with that for a while, and I'm going to be torn up about it inside. And then I'm going to start to break down in my relationships, and I'm going to start to carry this resentment or this frustration or this fear or this hurt or this angst. I'm going to carry it around long enough that maybe even my physical body will start to collapse, or maybe I will continue to attract circumstances into my life, experience that just allow me to keep validating this unforgiveness that I'm projecting into this photon field, and I'm arranging these photons at a subconscious level into the pattern that I'm inadequate or insufficient in some way. You follow? And then I'm going to get tired of living that way at some point. Or maybe I'm going to get so sick that I have some kind of revelation. Or maybe the pressure's going to get so big, maybe I'm going to lose my relationship and be afraid of losing my business all at the same time, and I'm going to have migraine headaches so big that I can't go to work, and perhaps I'm going to lose my dogs all at the same time, that all of that is happening. Well, that was my story, okay, that was part of my story. And boom, something falls, something drops in. And I, in that moment in my life, fell onto my bed crying so deeply, on a deep level that I had never cried before, and I kind of subconsciously felt myself giving myself permission to go ahead and lose it instead of trying to hold it together all this time. And in that moment, as I gave myself permission to have what I was having, something just broke free. And I was dropping into this state while spinning in a dark, deep well, head over heels and around in a bottomless pit. I had the greatest sense of joy rise up in me that I had ever experienced, because I was allowing myself to just have what was. I was no longer resisting and trying to make it into what I thought it was supposed to be like. Yeah, and that was part of my bus stop conversation. I didn't know it at the time. But this is what happens. We create a recipe, a soul contract, what you're going to go in and do this time. This is what you're going to awaken to, and this is the contribution that's going to happen while you're doing it. They happen simultaneously. So you have to receive in order to give. I had to receive in order to ever allow this great gift that I awakened to ever be given, to ever be received around the world. I had to accept it. I had to receive. I had to receive what I had awakened to. Do you follow what I'm saying? So receiving is absolutely in tandem with giving. It can't not be, because there is a constant exchange, and anything less than that, you're creating a vacuum that the universe will abhor. And so it will fill in the gaps if you don't. You follow? Someone else will come along and put their stuff in this vessel that you're holding that is just the trash can. You follow? You don't want to do that. So what we have to do is learn to come home. We have to learn to quicken. We have to learn to anchor and to rise. And so when you are experiencing anything that is creating friction in your life, that you're feeling tension in your body, if you insist on having tension in your body, I'm going to teach you how to have effective tension in your body. You follow what I'm saying? Right? So one of those is considered, it's a Sanskrit term called Mulabandha. It means root lock. And we tend to live up here in our heads. And if we could learn to lock it in here and have a tethering, have an anchoring going on for us all the time, then we're going to start to interpret things from a more quickened perspective. So we're going to be less likely to judge. We're going to be less likely to be in fear. We're going to be less likely to write a story about how wrong we're being done. You follow? And our bus stop will be fulfilled. When our bus stop contracts are fulfilled, it doesn't mean you have to leave. It means you get to live in joy. Okay? Good news. You follow? You don't have to, and you can't, but you don't have to go. But I want to tell you this, you can't get out without it. You follow? So you're going to have it. You're going to have this revelation. You're going to drop into your core, and you're going to anchor, and you're going to quicken and anchor and rise, and it might be in the last 5 minutes of your life. Yeah, I'd really love for it to be this week. You follow? So that the rest of life can be a little more enjoyable. You follow? It's going to happen. So the pressure's off. The pressure's off. It can't not happen. And we are designed to, as made of God stuff, meaning we're creators, we're designed to come in here and master our creatorship, to recognize that. But if you're trying to create from this splatted state, it'll work, and then it won't. It'll work right up until it doesn't. It will be joyful and grand, and then it won't. You'll reach a plateau beyond which you cannot move until you come home. So there's no such thing as a negative emotion. Your life is unfolding exactly in proportion as directed by your bus stop conversation. There is only one thing happening here, and it is good. And your job is to quicken, anchor, rise. It will first feel like you calling your spirit back, and then it will eventuate and mature into the recognition that I am the spirit that was being called back. It isn't something I'm working with. It is what I am. My job now is to train my mind to find me. My job is to train my mind to find me. You follow? This is what quantum science is teaching us, and it's time for us to step into the driver's seat. So let me tell you what Mula Bandha is so that you can feel this while we're sitting here, and then I'm going to take you through a little meditation exercise and embodiment practice that will allow us to infuse this energetically into our field instead of more conversation. It's an amazing experience of the truth of who you are. So Mula Bandha is you contracting at the root of your core. It's like a Kegel exercise, if you're familiar with that. It's basically like if you were going to the bathroom and you had to stop that midstream. Okay? You'd have to contract some muscles to do that. So basically from your navel down, just contract everything down. Just give it a squeeze. Okay? So you squeeze everything at the root of your spine. And at this squeezing root of the spine, lift it up. Just like pull it up toward your heart space. When you do this, what it begins to do is stabilize. It starts to stabilize the wobble, okay? And in the workshop, I'll describe what I mean about that wobble, because it's so significant for you and you figuring out what your bus stop conversation was about. So now squeeze your shoulder blades together, but open your heart in the front. So you're lifting up at Mula Bandha. And take a big breath in and let it fill your belly first and then your chest. Always fill your belly first and then your chest when you're wanting to build this anchoring presence in the body. Because if you breathe in your upper and then exhale out the top of your head. So I don't want you holding your breath while I'm talking here. Okay? Then take another deep breath in from overhead, but breathe in the belly first. Continue to breathe in and fill the chest. Breathe bigger than your body. And then exhale, drop it right down through the body into the earth. Drop it right down through the body. Okay? So this, now take a deep breath in from underneath where you sit. Mula Bandha, squeeze that, lift it up. Squeeze the back side of the heart. Breathe up into the belly. Let it feel good. Tuck the chin, lift the crown, and then exhale, roll your eyes up, feel the tension behind the eyes so that you can find your coordinates, and exhale out through the top of your head. Then take a deep breath in from overhead. Breathe it into the belly. Oh, let it feel good. And exhale right down through the body. Exhale out your nose. Always inhale, exhale through your nose when you're doing these particular practices, because what it's going to do is pull you into the central channel of your body. It serves as this quickening and this anchoring. Okay? So I'm going to take you through an exercise that will allow you to put all these things together as we're doing it. But what I want you to get is that we're living in our heads. We have to come down into our bodies. I liken it to the old-fashioned window blind, where if you pull it down and you tug on it just so, it'll stay. Right? If somebody comes to the door and makes wind in the area, makes a breeze through the room, it back up into the rolled up fashion. It goes, and this is how we are on our journey from our head to our heart. We have to take our journey from our head to our heart and deeper still into the root of our being. That's like pulling that blind down and tethering it. Otherwise, it's like you make this journey from your head to your heart, and you're in this beautiful, loving space. And as long as nobody says anything to you, or does anything, or cuts you off in traffic, the world is the most beautiful place you've ever experienced, right? And then the one person asks the one question that pushes those buttons that you're not even, you're not even aware of yet until you are, and we're going to dissolve those buttons altogether, and then there it is. You lose it. So this exercise is about bringing you down in here and tying this off and tethering yourself and anchoring in here, so that when you're out there in the crowds and you're doing this thing called life, that you don't splat again just because you're in the friction, because it's by design that you are here to step into a friction-based reality and bring the loving, stabilizing presence into it. You are the bringer of the love. So if you're looking for the love, it is because you're still oriented in that dispersed state. You dig? All right, so this is going to take us about 10 minutes. It'll take us right to the time that we're supposed to be finished, and it'll be a groovy thing. Yeah? We good? Everyone? Awesome. So take a deep breath in and exhale. Recognize that you are not only on an ocean of love, but in an ocean as love. You are in the unified field of consciousness. And when that unified field of consciousness begins to embody the very first vibrational frequency that is generated is love. So as I remember this, I quicken into the core so that I can open at the surface of my being. So that as I release the skin and the energetic pattern around the surface of my skin into the light that I know of, I can feel the circuitry landing all the way in to my core. That I take a deep breath in up from Mulabandha, the tip of my spine into the core heart space, and I exhale it up and out through the top of my head. As I do that, I release my thinking mind, and I simply feel, I simply allow that beautiful white light and liquid love to pour in from overhead. Automatically. It drops in, illuminating the right brain, activating the creator's sense, illuminating the left brain, accessing all aspects of my actioning, crossing the bandwidths, illuminating corpus callosum, a band of light between the two hemispheres. Allow liquid light and love to pour in, to drop into this throat center, illuminating the primitive brain on its way through, that I am the light coming into form. And as I allow this warm, beautiful essence, the truth of who I am, to pour deeper into this body. I recognize I am that light. I am that liquid, lighted love pouring into form. That I move my way into the heart center, where the open gateway between my divinity and my chosen humanity meld and merge and come together. I am here fully equipped to experience the fullness of my soul purpose. I am soul. I am the monad. I am this light divine pouring into the belly that I have through the solar plexus accessed personal story. But I bring the divinity of wholeness, infuse it through that story, whatever it is, to unfold. I drop myself down into the deep belly wisdom space. And in that wisdom space, I cause the body to align with the universal breath. Breathe deeply your way into the belly. Breathe your way into the belly. This space of physical realm that I am generating, my photons in alignment with my soul purpose. I breathe my way down to the tip of the spine, and I exhale into the bone, into the organs and the glands, into the tissues. Allow the light, the tiniest particle, into the DNA, into the molecules, into the space between, into the nothingness. It is all that I am. I am the empty space, animating it as I come. I come to this divine space as God's stuff. I am here as the stabilizing principle, to stabilize the wobble, the friction at the surface of life. Deep breath in, exhale into the ocean, into the depths of the ocean and the emotional body that she holds, into the feeling body, allow it to be true, into the earth space that holds the ocean herself, to the center of the third dimension. Mother Gaia, allow this Mother Divine space to hold this pristine presence. With a gentle mula bandha and a gentle squeezing of the heart, life will call and I will stay in the flow of the central channel of life's source as a human design. And I will breathe up from the center of the earth. Breathe up through this body. Let it feel good. The constant and unwavering support of the rest of who I am. As I exhale up and out through the top of the head. Stay in the body. Breathe in the belly. Breathe as you mean it. When the photon arrangement happens, in the presence of intention and a quickened at the core disposition, I am anchored. I will rise. And as I rise, I breathe in the belly and I stoke the wisdom that is stored. Billions of bits of information bombarding the soulful self here, anchored in this system. It reports to the gut. Breathe in the gut, breathe in the belly, breathe in the wisdom center. Contract, contract, quicken, quicken, quicken at the core, quicken at the core. Pull the shoulder blades together, open the heart, Mula Bandha. Breathe in the belly, tuck the chin, lift the crown, as if pumping up with a bicycle pump. Pump light up through the body, from the root to the second chakra at the belly. The third chakra, personal power. Be felt in the core. Resistance at the core, no resistance outside. I don't need it. I know who I am, I feel who I am. Breathe, breathe. Begin to roll one shoulder and roll the other shoulder and squeeze it while you roll. Every movement is accompanied with squeezing the tissues that I can feel who I am. Begin to twist the spine, twist the neck, roll the elbows and the wrists. Roll the elbows and the wrists. Feel the details of the fingers. Touch the fingertips together and rub them. Rub the fingertips together. Fingertips, not just the fingers, fingertips. And now the palms, and the palms. And roll, roll, roll the wrists, roll the wrists. Press your right foot into the earth. Roll it over on the outer blade. Come up on the toes. Feel yourself in the foot. Left foot, out on the outer blade. Roll the toes around. Press your feet into the floor. Press your feet into the floor. Find a space 2 feet beneath where you sit. And begin to take pressure onto your feet and press up. Press down to rise up. And roll up the body like a fern frond unfolding. Inhale as you rise. Roll up one segment at a time. And roll the neck back. One shoulder back. The other shoulder back. Begin to step onto the floor with your right foot. Build circuits in your right ankle, up and down on your right knee. Contract all the muscles in your right hip. Start to feel a line of connection, communication, circuitry. Step onto your left foot. Open the bottom of your left foot, the ankle, up and down on the left knee. Contract all the muscles around the left hip. Feel a line of communication come up through this body. Breathe it up through the body. Squeeze the back of the heart. Exhale right out the top of your head. Feel the central channel. Feel the central channel. Take a deep breath in from overhead. Let it come in. No more resistance. Mula Bandha and exhale down into the earth. And now just let the body fall. Just let it fall open like rubber. Let it be without resistance on the outside. Mula Bandha. Squeeze the back of the heart. Tuck the chin. Raise the crown. Take a deep breath in from overhead. Shake the arms. Twist the spine. Exhale down through the belly, down through the legs, down through the open feet. And raise the arms up overhead. Feel a big vessel of light. It's a big vessel, a big chalice of light. Take a deep breath in. Let it fall in through and down. All the way through. Up and down. Exhale through your nose. Don't miss it. If you exhale through your mouth, you miss the central channel. Exhale through your crown. Inhale through your crown. Exhale down through the tip of your spine. Ah ha, 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 ah ha. Now twist the body. Just twist the body. Roll the wrists and the elbows and the shoulders. Squeeze the heart. Squeeze it. Take a deep breath in. Let it feel good. And then shake the body. Like rubber. Deep breath in. And exhale. Oh. Notice how you feel in your body. Whisper to yourself, this is the truth of who I am. I am the energy, quickening, anchoring, and rising. My mind's job is to find me constantly. When making a decision in life, if it does not feel like this, it is not your path. Register this in your conscious mind, your subconscious mind, conscious memory, subconscious memory. Allow the photons to arrange in this moment to this true identity, closer and closer to home. It is a great honor to share this experience of life with you and to share this perspective in our conversation today. I look forward to sharing more. Thank you for your time. Enjoy your day.
Water, everybody!